On my 70th birthday, I stood in front of my family and friends with a smile on my face. The music was playing, glasses were raised, and the room was full of laughter. But just as I opened my mouth to thank everyone for being there, a young woman I had never seen before stood up. Her voice cut through the noise as she said, "I think you knew my mother." She held up a small photograph, and when my eyes fell on it, my heart stopped. The room went silent, and even the music came to an end. Before I take you deeper into this story, make sure to subscribe to this channel and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Margaret Hayes. I have lived a long life, filled with both joy and hardship. I was a school teacher for most of my years, and now I spend my days surrounded by my children and grandchildren. My son David and my daughter Claire had worked for weeks to make this birthday celebration special. The hall was decorated with balloons and flowers, and the tables were set with care. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a moment where I could look back on the life I had built and the family I had raised with pride. I looked around the room that evening and saw the faces of the people who had shaped my life. David stood tall, always the protective son, his arm around his wife. Claire was glowing, her children running around the dance floor. My oldest granddaughter had just finished singing me happy birthday, her little voice filling the room with love. Surrounded by all this, I felt deeply grateful. At 70, not everyone gets to be honored in such a way, and I knew how fortunate I was. But as I stood at the head of the table with everyone's eyes on me, a thought crossed my mind. My children and grandchildren believed they knew my story, but there were chapters of my life I had never spoken about, memories that were painful, secrets that had been locked away for decades. I had convinced myself those secrets would never matter again, that the past could stay buried where it belonged. That changed the moment the young woman rose from her chair. She looked barely 20, with determination in her eyes and a photo clutched tightly in her hand. The entire room turned to face her, whispers spreading across the table. I froze where I stood, my glass still lifted, my words stuck in my throat. In that instant, joy turned to dread, and I knew something long forgotten had found its way back to me. The room was filled with whispers as the young woman's words echoed in my ears. "I think you knew my mother." She stood with her shoulders straight, her hand shaking only slightly as she held out the photograph. All around me, the chatter of celebration had vanished. The music stopped, forks rested on plates, and eyes that moments ago were full of warmth now looked to me with curiosity and confusion. My 70th birthday, the night meant to celebrate my life, had suddenly turned into something else entirely. I stared at the young woman, unable to move. My breath caught as I took in her appearance. She had chestnut hair that framed her face, and her eyes, clear and piercing, carried both strength and sadness. There was something familiar in them, something that made my stomach twist with recognition I wasn't ready to face. My glass trembled in my hand before I set it down, afraid it would slip and shatter. David leaned forward from his chair, his voice steady but low. "Mom, who is she? Do you know her?" His question felt heavier than it should have. Claire, seated beside him, looked between me and the young woman, her brows furrowed in confusion. My grandchildren, sensing the shift in the room, went quiet, their playful giggles replaced with uneasy silence. The young woman took a step closer and extended the photograph so everyone could see. It was old, the edges worn and fading, but the image was clear enough. It showed two women standing side by side, their arms around each other, smiling as if the world belonged to them. One of those women was me, decades younger, with long hair and bright eyes. The other was someone I had not seen in over 50 years. My heart clenched. Anna Carter. Her name rushed into my mind like a wave crashing against the shore. Anna had been my closest friend when I was in my 20s. We were inseparable back then, two young women full of dreams, laughing late into the night, sharing secrets we never told anyone else. She had been a part of my world during a time when everything felt alive and full of possibility. But her life had taken a tragic turn, one that I never spoke about. And now, standing in front of me, was her daughter. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to speak. Where did you get this?" My voice cracked, and I could hear the tension in it. The young woman looked straight at me, her expression steady. "It was in my mother's things. I never knew her well. She died when I was just a baby. I've spent years searching for answers, trying to piece together who she was. And then I found this photograph. I needed to know who the woman beside her was. And tonight, I found you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, waiting for my response. My children's faces were pale, searching mine for explanation. David pressed again, this time firmer. "Mom, what is going on? Who is she talking about? Who is her mother?" I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Memories I had kept locked away for decades fought their way to the surface. Nights of laughter with Anna, the secrets she confided in me, the way her life began to unravel when she trusted the wrong person. And then, the day she was gone, disappeared without a goodbye, leaving me to carry guilt and questions that had never found closure. I had buried all of it. I told myself it was the past, that speaking about it would bring nothing but pain. My family never knew the details. I had raised my children with the story that my younger years were simple, uneventful, but the truth had been sitting quietly in the shadows, waiting for a moment like this to rise. Now it was here, alive in the form of Anna's daughter, standing at my birthday party with a look of determination that reminded me so much of her mother. It hurt to breathe. "I don't understand," Claire said, her voice shaking. "Why do you look so pale, Mom? Who was Anna?" The whispers grew louder, guests turning to each other, piecing together bits of the conversation, creating rumors before I could even speak. My hands trembled as I tried to hold myself together. This was supposed to be a night of joy, but it had turned into a reckoning. Inside me, a storm raged. Part of me wanted to stand tall, deny everything, and push the girl away. I could say it was all a misunderstanding, that she had confused me for someone else. But when I looked at her eyes, Anna's eyes staring back at me, I knew I couldn't lie. She deserved answers, and so did my family. I had spent years hiding behind silence, but silence had brought us here. Every second that passed made the air heavier, the tension thicker. The past was no longer content to stay buried, and I could feel it pressing on me from every direction. My children deserved the truth, and this young woman deserved to know her mother's story. But opening that door meant revealing parts of myself I had locked away for half a lifetime. As I sat there, caught between fear and responsibility, I realized that the choice I made next would change not only how my family saw me, but how this girl remembered her mother. And the weight of that choice settled heavy on my shoulders, pulling me deeper into the conflict I had tried for so long to avoid. For a long moment, I sat frozen in my chair. The room around me seemed to blur, the colors of the balloons and flowers fading into the background. All I could see was the young woman standing tall with that old photograph in her hand. She looked at me as if she had waited her whole life for this moment. Everyone else in the hall held their breath, waiting for me to respond. My mind spun with choices. I could deny knowing her mother. I could pretend I was mistaken, wave away the past, and send her back into the shadows she had come from. It would be easy to protect myself that way, but the truth clawed at my chest, and I knew denial would only make the wound deeper for both of us. I steadied my hands against the table and rose slowly to my feet. The chatter in the room died completely, and the silence grew so heavy it almost rang in my ears. I looked at her, then at the photograph she held, and felt the weight of 50 years pressing down on me. My family watched with wide eyes, and I could see David's jaw tighten, his expression caught between fear and curiosity. Claire clutched her daughter's hand under the table, her face pale. They had never seen me like this. "Show me the picture," I said softly, my voice trembling but firm. She stepped closer and placed it in my hand. My fingers brushed the worn edges, and when I looked down, my heart twisted with recognition. There I was, smiling with my arm around Anna Carter. We had been in our 20s, full of life, standing in front of a county fair booth with bright banners behind us. I remembered that day vividly, the music, the laughter, the promises we made to stay friends forever. My throat tightened, as I held the image that captured a happiness that would never return. Whispers spread through the hall. "Who is that woman?" someone asked. "Why does Margaret look so shaken?" The noise grew louder until David raised his hand, trying to quiet the crowd. "Mom," he said firmly, his voice steady but demanding. "We deserve to know. Who is she? Why is this girl saying you knew her mother?" I looked at my son, my daughter, my grandchildren, and the friends who had gathered to celebrate me. For 70 years I had carried myself as a woman of strength, someone who faced life with dignity and purpose. But in this moment, I felt stripped bare. Every secret I had locked away was scratching at the door, begging to be told. I could feel my pulse racing, my palms damp with sweat. The young woman's eyes softened, though her voice remained steady. Her name was Anna Carter. She was my mother. She died when I was very young, and I never knew much about her. But when I found this photograph, I knew there was someone who could tell me who she really was. That someone is you. The sound of Anna's name pierced me like a knife. My knees almost gave out, but I gripped the back of my chair for strength. I remembered Anna's laughter, her kindness, the way she lit up every room she walked into. I remembered the heartbreak of losing her, the unanswered questions, and the guilt that had weighed on me for half a century. Tears welled in my eyes, and I blinked hard, trying to keep control. The choice was clear. I could no longer hide behind silence. Emily deserved to know the truth about her mother, and my family deserved to know the woman I had once been, and the pain I had carried. I turned toward the young woman, my voice breaking but steady enough to carry through the hall. "Yes," I said. "I knew your mother. She was my closest friend." Gasps spread through the room, and I saw Claire's hand fly to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. David leaned back, shaking his head, as if trying to process what he had just heard. My admission silenced the whispers. Every eye was on me, waiting for what would come next. I felt a strange calm settle over me. For the first time in decades, I was about to stop running from my past. I gestured for Emily to come closer. She walked slowly to my side, and when she stood next to me, I could see her mother in her face more clearly than ever. My heart ached with both sorrow and relief. I knew the hardest part was yet to come, but the decision had been made. I would not hide. I would not pretend Anna never existed. I drew in a deep breath and placed the photograph gently on the table. "There are things you don't know," I said, my voice carrying through the hall. Things I never thought I would have to speak of again. But tonight, on my 70th birthday, the past has come to find me, and I owe you all the truth. The room went silent again, but this time, it was not the silence of confusion. It was the silence of expectation. Everyone leaned closer, waiting for the story that was about to change everything they thought they knew about me. I stood there holding the photograph in my hand, the weight of decades pressing down on me. My guests leaned forward in silence, waiting for answers. My children looked at me with wide, uncertain eyes, and Emily, the young woman who had just turned my life upside down, stood tall with her chin lifted, as if bracing herself for whatever truth I was about to give. I took a deep breath, and for the first time in 50 years, I began to speak about Anna. Her name was Anna Carter, I said, my voice trembling. She was my best friend when I was in my 20s. We met in college. She was bright, beautiful, and full of life. She had a laugh that could make a whole room turn to her, and a heart so big she trusted people who didn't deserve her trust. As the words left my lips, I felt a part of me breaking open. Memories came rushing back. The nights we stayed up late dreaming about our futures. The way she confided in me about her fears. The times we walked hand in hand through town, promising we would always be there for each other. But life wasn't kind to Anna, I continued. She fell in love with a man who didn't love her the way she deserved. He was charming in public, but cruel in private. He controlled her, isolated her, and broke her spirit piece by piece. I tried to warn her. I begged her to leave him, but she loved him too much. Or maybe she was too afraid. I watched her disappear into his shadow, and it tore me apart. Gasps filled the hall as the room shifted, everyone hanging on every word. Claire reached out and grabbed David's arm, her eyes locked on me. I could feel their shock, but I pressed on. This was no longer about protecting myself. It was about giving Emily the truth she had come for. One night, Anna came to me crying. She said she couldn't take it anymore. She wanted to run, to start fresh somewhere far away. She begged me to help her, to keep her safe. I promised I would, but the very next week, she was gone. Not gone by choice. Gone because he wouldn't let her go. That was the last time I saw her. The man she trusted destroyed her, and I have carried that guilt every day of my life. I failed her. I should have done more. I should have called the police. I should have screamed louder, but I was young and afraid, and by the time I found the courage, it was too late. My voice broke on the last word, and I had to grip the chair beside me to steady myself. The hall was dead quiet. Even the children sensed the gravity of what I had just revealed. Emily's face had gone pale, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. She finally whispered, "So you did know her. You were there when she needed someone." I shook my head slowly. I was there, but not enough. She trusted me, and I let her down. And when she died, I carried the shame. I buried it so deep that even my children never knew. Tonight, when you stood up with this photo, I felt the past crash into me all at once. Seeing you is like seeing her again, and it breaks my heart because you remind me of what she lost, and what I lost too. Emily stepped closer, and for the first time, her voice cracked. All my life I've wondered who my mother really was. My relatives told me little pieces, but nothing that felt real. I just wanted to know if she was loved. I wanted to know if she mattered to someone. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I reached for her hand. She mattered, more than I can ever explain. She was my dearest friend. She was loved, Emily. She was loved so much. And you, standing here now, you are proof of her love still living in this world. A murmur swept through the guests. Some had tears in their eyes. Others looked at me with sympathy, realizing they were seeing a side of me they had never known. My children were silent, their faces torn between sorrow and understanding. David finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "Mom, why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked at him with tears clouding my vision. "Because I didn't want you to see me as weak. I didn't want my shame to become your burden. I thought if I kept it hidden, it would stay in the past. But the past doesn't stay buried forever. It finds a way back." Emily squeezed my hand tightly, her tears now falling freely. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for remembering her. Thank you for giving me this piece of her I never had." The hall remained silent, but the silence was no longer filled with judgment. It was filled with reverence. People had come to celebrate 70 years of my life, but now they were witnessing the truth of who I really was. A woman who had loved, who had lost, and who had carried a wound for half a century. And in that moment, I realized the story wasn't just about guilt. It was about connection. It was about one woman finding her mother again through me, and me finding a chance to honor my friend's memory after years of silence. When the last word left my lips, the silence in the hall was overwhelming. For a long moment, no one moved. I could hear the faint hum of the lights above us, the shuffle of someone shifting nervously in their seat, and my own heart pounding in my chest. My hands still trembled from the weight of what I had confessed. After 50 years of burying the past, I had finally spoken Anna's name aloud and told the truth. Emily stood before me, her eyes red and glistening, and I could see the battle in her face. She was caught between grief for the mother she never got to know and relief that someone had finally given her the truth. When she opened her mouth, her voice shook but carried strength. "All I wanted," she said, "was to know that she mattered, that she wasn't just a shadow in my life. You've given me more than I ever hoped for. You gave me her story." Her words struck me deep. For years, I had thought of myself as a coward for not doing enough to save Anna. I had thought my silence was a weakness that dishonored her memory. But looking at Emily, I realized that remembering her, carrying her story, and finally sharing it had given Anna a kind of life that could never be taken away. My children sat in stunned silence, their expressions complicated. David leaned forward with his hands clasped tightly together, his eyes searching mine. "Mom," he finally said, "you carried this pain alone for so long. Why didn't you let us share it with you?" Tears filled my eyes again, but this time they weren't from guilt alone. They were from the strange relief of being seen, truly seen, because I wanted to protect you, I answered softly. I thought if I locked away my shame, you could grow up free of it. I didn't want you to see the parts of me that were broken, but maybe that was a mistake. Maybe what we really need as a family is honesty, even when it hurts. Claire reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes wet with emotion. "We don't love you because you're perfect," she whispered. "We love you because you're ours. Even with the past you've carried, you're the mother who raised us with strength. You didn't fail us, and you didn't fail her. You just did what you could with the life you were given." Those words cracked something open inside me. For decades, I had punished myself with the idea that I had failed Anna completely. But now, standing here with my daughter's hand in mine and Anna's daughter beside me, I began to see the truth. I hadn't erased her. I hadn't let her be forgotten. I had carried her memory in my heart, even when I was too afraid to speak it. And tonight, that memory had found its way to the one person who needed it most. Emily reached into her purse and pulled out the photo again. She placed it gently on the table in front of me. "Keep it," she said, her voice breaking. "I have others, but this one belongs with you. You knew her, you loved her, and I want you to have it." I held the photo close to my chest, my tears falling freely now. "Thank you," I whispered. "I will treasure it." The room that had once been filled with celebration was now heavy with emotion, but it wasn't a sorrowful weight anymore. It was a quiet, powerful connection, the kind that binds strangers into something closer than family. My guests had come expecting a birthday party. Instead, they had witnessed a reckoning, a confession, and a bridge between two lives separated by loss. Later that night, after the guests had gone and my family had gathered around me, Emily sat quietly at my side. We didn't speak much. Sometimes silence is enough when words can't carry the depth of feeling. She rested her hand on mine, and I realized that through her, I still had a chance to honor Anna, not by dwelling on the guilt of the past, but by being present now, by giving Emily the pieces of her mother I could still share. As I looked at my children and grandchildren, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I couldn't change what had happened. I couldn't go back and protect Anna the way I had promised, but I could give her daughter the truth. I could give her the love of remembrance. And in doing that, I found a piece of forgiveness for myself. That night, as I lay in bed with the photograph resting on my nightstand, I whispered a quiet prayer. "Anna, your daughter found me, and I promise I will not fail her." For the first time in decades, my heart felt lighter. To anyone listening to my story, I want to leave you with this. Don't bury the truth out of fear. Don't carry silence like a shield. Sometimes the past hurts, but sharing it can bring healing you never thought possible. And sometimes, telling the truth is the only way to give life to the people we've lost. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.